I was 13 when my parents left me on a cruise ship and stood there on the dock, grinning like they'd just pulled off the prank of the century. They weren't laughing the way people laugh when something's actually funny. It was that brittle, too loud kind of laugh, the kind that comes after something cruel, when you're supposed to pretend it's no big deal. My dad even cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Let's see how long it takes him to get home," like I was some contestant in a game show nobody asked to be on. Then they turned and walked away. No panic, no last-minute sprint, no attempt to get the ship to stop. They didn't even look back. Just waved one last time like I was going off to camp. Sipant. They said it was a joke. Sipant. But not the kind you come back from. Sipant. At first I didn't believe it was real. I stood there, gripping the rail, convinced they were filming me. Maybe hiding behind a kiosk. Maybe crouched behind someone. Phones out, ready to post my reaction to their private parenting experiment. They were big on experiments. Everything with them was a test. A challenge. A game to prove whether I was clever or capable. One time they turned off the water in the house for 2 days to see if I could problem solve how to wash my clothes. Another time they moved my bed into the garage while I was at school and told me they were adjusting my environment. They like to say they were raising a survivor. What they meant was, you're on your own. I didn't even notice the ship had started to pull away until the horn sounded and the deck gave a subtle lurch. I turned and saw the dock drifting back, the port shrinking, and there they were, 2 blurry dots, waving, laughing, like they'd won something. My first thought wasn't, this is messed up, afaristum. It was glulim, alright. What's the move? Dasum, that kind of thinking. That wasn't new. I'd grown up that way. Calculated, quiet, always scanning for the angle. Our house wasn't violent, but it was sharp. Everything said with a smile that didn't reach the eyes. My mom told people I was quirky. My dad called me the background character. At school, teachers said I was polite. At home, I was tolerated. Yacromage is I liked routines. I read books about planes, space shuttles, cities built underground. I built models from balsa wood and lined them up by decade. I wasn't fun, so they said. Not spontaneous enough. Not wild enough. Too sensitive. Too literal. Too much. They hated that I asked questions. Called me little professor. My dad once said I had the energy of a human spreadsheet. Thus, I learned to need less. Clothes were there, if I cleaned them. Food, if I remembered to buy it. Attention? That was a luxury. So when they offered the cruise, I didn't expect it to be a dream vacation. But I hoped. A little. A little. They said it was for family bonding. My mom told her sister it was a reset. My dad told me it was to see what we're working with. I packed carefully. Clothes folded into tight rolls. Camera charged. Notebook in the front pocket. I even brought my own shampoo because I didn't trust whatever the ship gave out. The first day went the way things usually did. They drank too much. Laughed too loudly. My dad found bar buddies before dinner. My mom spent hours posing near the railing for selfies with her ship drink. They got annoyed when I wanted to play cards or go to the trivia event. By day 2, we docked at a private island the cruise line owned. Think postcard beach vibes. Fake tiki bars, overpriced coconuts, white sand raked every morning to hide the erosion. We walked around for an hour or two. Then they told me to head back early. We'll catch up, my dad said. Get yourself something from the buffet. So I went. I waited near the gangway, watching the clock. Thought they were just a few minutes behind. Then the ship horn blared. Then the ropes lifted. Then I saw them, standing near a cart of straw hats and knockoff sunglasses, waving. No urgency, no last call, no sprint to board. Just 2 people watching their kid float away. Stanira. For the first hour I stayed near the railing, convinced it was a bluff. Stanira. By the second hour I started walking the decks. Happy. Third hour, I was combing through the ship floor by floor, scanning every restaurant, every hallway, every face. Nothing. Eventually, I walked up to the help desk. Ach. A woman with a silver name tag asked if I knew my parents' cabin number. I didn't. She asked for their names. I gave them. She typed something, squinted at the screen, called someone else over. Ia. A supervisor showed up. I told them my parents had stayed behind, that it was intentional, that they said it was a joke. No one laughed. They asked me when I'd last seen them. I told them the port. The time. What my dad said. They nodded slowly, like trying to process a glitch in the system. Then they walked me down to a room that smelled like bleach and stale air. Gave me a sandwich. Said someone would figure it out. Calls were made. Port authorities contacted. Nothing came up. No hotel check-ins. No sightings. No reports filed. Their house? Still full of mail. Their car? Gone. 1 ulti. I asked if the ship could turn around. They said it was too late. We were too far out. Mahsibi Chait. That night, I was given a cot in the infirmary. I didn't sleep. Just stared at the wall and went over every word they'd said that day. Next morning, Carmen showed up. Staff. Mid-30s. Soft voice. She sat on the edge of the cot and said they still hadn't found them. That we'd finish the cruise, and someone would meet me at the next port to help get me home. I asked what would happen after that. She said she didn't know. Probably someone from Child Services. Hey. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Hey. Something just clicked. Hey. This was it. The final test. The grand finale in their long-running experiment. Could I survive this? Fine. I'd beat them at their own game. Wivity. I did inventory. Backpack. Camera. Notebook. 2 pens. Room key. No phone. No wallet. But I had time. I had my brain. And Voss, for the first time in my life, nobody was standing over my shoulder telling me who to be. I started writing everything. Names. Locations. Maps of the ship. What time the crew changed shifts. I wasn't panicking. I was processing. Later, Carmen came back and said they were moving me to a staff cabin for the rest of the trip. Cleaner. Quieter. 20. I thanked her. Not because I felt thankful, but because I needed her to see I wasn't a problem. I needed them all to see me as capable. Ria. I ate with the staff. Smaller portions but real food. I watched the crew. How they moved. How they communicated. I studied their habits. Learned the fast routes between decks. Memorized cleaning schedules. Knew when security changed shifts. Knew how to stay invisible. By day 3, no one asked if I was okay anymore. And the truth? I almost was. The night before we docked, Carmen handed me a packet with instructions. An escort would meet me at the terminal. I'd go to the embassy. Then home. Or something like it. She asked if I wanted her to stay by my side when we got off the ship. I said no. I've got it, I told her Pipi Amares. And I did. That was the beginning. Not a rescue. Not a reunion. A reset. They left me on a cruise ship as a joke, and I decided that the joke ends with me. I wouldn't wait for them to come back. I'd build forward, on my own terms. I spent the next 5 days on that ship, riding a floating city that felt too big and too empty at the same time. After the night in the infirmary, they moved me into a staff cabin below Deck 5. It was a tight space, barely big enough to stretch out, but it was quiet, and it didn't smell like disinfectant. Carmen said it'd be better this way. She wasn't wrong. Carmen checked in every morning, always with food, toast, fruit, sometimes oatmeal, and a little nod like she was silently asking, "Still with me?" She never pried, which I appreciated more than I could say. It felt like she understood that anything too soft might break me in half. She told me someone from corporate would meet me in Miami, that I wouldn't have to deal with customs or explain anything. "They'll have paperwork," she said, like it was a magic spell that would get me home. I didn't believe her. Not because I thought she was lying, but because I'd stopped thinking things would just work out. I didn't explore the ship for fun. I wasn't on vacation, but I watched. I paid attention. I learned the crew worked like an orchestra, everyone moving with rhythm, always a half second ahead of chaos. I watched the janitors mop hallways before anyone noticed the spill. I saw the waiters memorize entire orders without writing anything down. There was a system to everything, and I made it my job to understand it. By the second day, I'd figured out how to get from my cabin to Deck 10 without running into the entertainment crowd. I took the back stairs, waited by the laundry chute until the hallway cleared, then slipped past the crew quarters. I moved like a ghost. People noticed me less that way. I kept a list in my notebook. Names, times, movements. Which crew members worked, which shifts, which officers stayed up late, who took their breaks early. I wasn't sure why I was doing it. Maybe it was control. Maybe it was just something to hold on to. Carmen came by in the evenings too. She brought news when she had it. But mostly, she just sat with me. She'd leave a small plate of whatever she could swipe from the staff kitchen. Rice, chicken, sometimes those little packets of crackers that always tasted faintly of salt and dust. We didn't talk much. But she stayed. Kalaha Poplan. I wrote more than I ever had in my life. Not essays, not journal entries. Just fragments. Thoughts. Memories. I listed every adult who'd helped me since the dock. Carmen, of course. The nurse who gave me orange juice. The security officer who nodded at me when I passed. The kitchen worker who didn't speak much English but offered me a roll and pointed toward the mess hall. Tots, every name mattered. Every kindness. Hotzi. I didn't sleep well. Too many dreams where the ship kept sailing, and I never got off. Or dreams where I did get off but nobody was waiting. Just long hallways, silent airports, signs I couldn't read. Toll. One night I dreamed I was back at home, only the walls were made of fog. My parents were sitting at the kitchen table, sipping wine, talking about how proud they were that I figured it out. I was standing there, soaked to the bone, asking, why? But they didn't answer, they just smiled, like I was some equation that finally solved itself. Mole. Day 3, I helped one of the crew members fix a jammed supply cart. He grunted a thanks and handed me a wrapped chocolate. That felt like currency. That felt like I belonged somewhere, even just a little. Day 4, I started cleaning up after myself in the mess. Took my tray, wiped the table. One of the kitchen staff patted my shoulder. That was the most physical contact I'd had since the dock. On the 5th morning, Carmen told me we were docking in less than 24 hours. Her voice was softer than usual. Like she was sad about something but didn't want to say it out loud. James will be meeting you at the port, she said. He's with corporate, he's good. I didn't ask questions. What was there to ask? The next day, I packed everything I had. My backpack. The notebook. My camera. I stuffed a roll from breakfast into the side pocket. Just in case. Mishdid. James was waiting in the terminal. Suit, no tie. Clipboard under one arm. He didn't smile. Just held out an envelope and said, "Don't open this until you're at the airport." He walked fast, talked faster. Told me I had a direct flight booked, someone from Child Protective Services would meet me at the gate, that I'd be processed when I landed, that it would all be handled. He didn't mention my parents. I didn't ask. Hit the airport. James sat with me at the gate for exactly 5 minutes. Then he stood, shook my hand like we'd just closed a deal, and left. That was it. A woman from CPS showed up 20 minutes later. Diane. She had warm eyes and a notebook filled with someone else's handwriting. She asked what school I went to, what I liked to do, if I had any other family. I said no to all of it. She nodded like that made sense. When they called boarding, she walked me to the door. "You've done great," she said. I didn't respond. I just clutched the envelope James gave me and stepped onto the plane. Zen. I stared out the window the whole flight. Didn't eat. Didn't talk to the flight attendants. The notebook was open on my tray table. I'd added 2 more names. P. Zelen. When I landed, another woman was waiting with a sign. I followed her without saying much. She took me to a quiet room near baggage claim. Told me I'd be placed in a temporary home. Just for now. She didn't say foster care, but I knew. That night I slept in a bedroom with bunk beds, 5 other kids in the house. No one spoke. I didn't unpack. I didn't cry. I didn't open the envelope. Nimes. 2 days later, someone from the county showed up. Said my parents hadn't been found. That their house was empty, their phones disconnected. Mail untouched. Like they'd just peeled off their lives and walked away. Countermatum. She asked if I wanted to press charges. Countermatum. I didn't answer. Countermatum. That night, I opened the envelope. Countermatum. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. No letterhead. No apology. Just facts. This document verifies that the minor in question was left unsupervised by legal guardians while aboard our vessel. Incident recorded. Guardians made aware. Local authorities contacted. That was it. I folded it back up, slid it into the notebook, and wrote a new title on the first page. How to Get Home. Over the next few weeks, everything blurred. Social workers. Court appointments. I stopped keeping track of names. I didn't want to. Aiton. They placed me with a couple who had fostered before. Quiet house. No kids of their own. They didn't ask questions. They set rules. They made dinner. They didn't pretend to be anything they weren't. They gave me a prepaid phone. I used it to look up news about the cruise. Found a single article. Missing minor recovered from cruise ship. Situation under investigation. No names. No parents. Eventually I stopped checking. Instead, I typed up everything from my notebook, edited it, reordered it, turned it into a real document, a story even. I titled it, Abandoned. Months passed. No letters. No calls. Just silence. Unmatterized doc even. When the judge asked if I wanted to stay with the couple permanently, I said yes. Matter. It wasn't home. But it was mine. Unmatterized. The night I was officially placed, I printed my story. All of it. Stapled it. Put it in a manila envelope. On the last page, I wrote, "Sometimes the way home isn't where you came from." Then I mailed it to the last address I had for them. No note, no return address, just the story. I published the story, about a year later. Just a blog post, no clickbait title, no SEO strategy, just a raw version, laid out like a case file and sealed with a half-hearted fake name. I didn't expect much. I hit publish at 1 in the morning and went to bed like I was dropping a bottle in the ocean. When I woke up, I had 12 emails. By the end of the week, over 100. They came in waves. Survivors of abandonment, former foster kids, people with parents who called it tough love when what they meant was neglect. Some just wrote 2 words, "Thank you." Others sent their entire life stories in run-on paragraphs, unsure how to end them. I read every single one. Some hurt. Some healed. All of them made me realize just how many people had walked through fire and come out the other side, unsure whether they were allowed to talk about it. Then came the media people. A podcast producer wanted to do a series. A documentary filmmaker emailed asking if I could retrace the journey for a camera. A publisher said they'd turn my blog into a memoir and offered me an advance that felt like monopoly money. But he said no to everyone at first. I wasn't ready. I wasn't interested in being a headline. I didn't want my trauma packaged in ambient music and dramatic cutaways. AC! But the emails kept coming. From kids. From adults who still felt 13. From teachers, social workers, even a therapist who said she'd printed my blog and handed it to clients who couldn't find the words for their own stories. So I said yes. 1 interview. An independent podcast with no ads and a host who actually listened. It aired and I braced for the internet to eat me alive. But instead of trolls, I got invitations. More interviews. Then a school asked if I'd speak to their students. Middle schoolers. The exact age I'd been when it happened. I stood in their gym, palms sweating, heart beating in my throat, and I told the story. Not the polished version, just the truth. What it felt like to realize your safety net was fake, what it meant to start from zero and climb. To a 16. A kid came up afterward and said, "You made it sound like surviving wasn't shameful." I told him, "That's because it's not." That moment stuck with me. So did his face. Weeks passed. Then months. I finished high school early, took my GED and moved into a small apartment with more books than furniture. The couple who'd taken me in came to my graduation, sat in the front row. The woman cried when my name was called. I didn't hug them, but I nodded. That felt like enough. They asked what I wanted to do next. I told them I wanted to teach kids how to write. Not because writing fixes everything, but because it gives you a place to put the broken pieces until you're ready to look at them. I enrolled in community college. Got a part-time job shelving books at the local library. Every spare moment went to typing out my story again. This time, not as therapy, as a real narrative. A beginning, a middle, an end. I titled it, Abandoned. The post got picked up by a major site. 3 million reads in less than a month. The comments were overwhelming. Most were kind. Some weren't. That's the internet. Abandoned. Then, a local reporter reached out. Said she thought she'd found my parents. Abandoned. 6 states away. Living under new names. Hosting a podcast about self-reliance and raising resilient kids. The irony punched me in the chest, but I wasn't surprised. She asked if I wanted to comment. I said no. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want closure. I wanted distance. People kept asking about forgiveness. Interviews, blog readers, strangers on Twitter. Do you forgive them? I always answered the same, no. Not because I'm bitter, but because forgiveness assumes something was broken between us. My parents didn't break me. They didn't even see me. They saw a challenge. A test. Something to mold, push, monitor, control. Lie. So I didn't forgive them, I just stopped playing their game. Lie Wang sighing. That was enough. Lie Wangs. I spent the next 2 years writing and working. I got into a small liberal arts college, on scholarship. Studied education. Took classes in child psychology, storytelling, trauma-informed teaching. Every paper I wrote, every project I did, all of it pointed back to the same question: how do you teach someone who's never been taught to trust? I started volunteering at a local after-school program, kids with all kinds of stories, some rougher than mine. I didn't try to fix them. Just handed them notebooks and said, write whatever you want. They did. They wrote poems about monsters under beds and essays about dreams they weren't sure they were allowed to have. One kid wrote about his dad disappearing for 2 years and showing up like nothing happened. Another wrote about her mom's boyfriend and a closet she hid in. We didn't talk about healing. We just made stories, and slowly I started building something that looked like a life. Not perfect, not clean, but mine. I found a rhythm. School, work, writing, helping. I got a new therapist who didn't try to turn me into someone else. I made 1 or 2 real friends, the kind who text just to say hey, not because they want anything. And then, one night, I printed out the final version of Abandoned. I read every word out loud, fixed typos, tweaked the pacing. When it was ready, I submitted it to a small publisher that specialized in true stories. They picked it up in 2 weeks. When it launched, it hit 1 million reads in 21 days. Mafaxam. I got letters, hundreds. From kids, from teachers, from social workers, from people still trying to make sense of the silence they grew up in. That's when I realized this story was never about my parents. It was about the kids who read it and realized they weren't alone. It was for the ones who got left behind and still found a way forward. For the ones who learned that sometimes, home isn't where you came from, it's what you build when no one else comes looking. Years later, I found myself standing in front of a classroom. Not as a guest, as a teacher. A real one. I had a desk, a chair that squeaked, a drawer full of emergency granola bars. I handed out notebooks, like gifts, and said, let's figure out how to say it, whatever it is. Some days, they wrote fire. Other days, just scribbles in silence. Both were okay. I told them the truth. You don't owe anyone a story you're not ready to tell, but if you are, tell it your way. Sometimes I'd get an email late at night. I wrote something. Can you read it? Always. Yes, I still get messages from readers. Still get asked if I'd ever meet my parents again, if they reached out. They haven't, and I don't think I'd want to. Because I know now that getting home wasn't about finding them. He is Sess. It was about finding me. He is Sess. That's how long it took me to get home. Long enough to realize I never needed to go back. Because I made something better. And it's still growing.